It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley are here, but where is our spring update? Paul and Mary Jo will explain all. We'll talk a little bit about what to expect in the next version of Windows. And, of course, there's beer, too. It's all coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley. Episode 565, recorded Wednesday, April 11th, 2018. Ode to the Snipping Tool. Windows Weekly is brought to you by TurboTax Live. New from TurboTax. Now you can get a personal review of your tax return with a CPA or EA right on your screen. Talk live with a tax expert as often as you need for tax advice to help you file with confidence. Go to TurboTaxLive.com/Windows. It's time for Windows Weekly. Oh, what a day to do Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley. We call this Patch Wednesday. Or the day after Patch Tuesday. Paul Thurrott is at Thurrott.com, THURROTT.com, where he and his team write all about Windows all day long, all about Microsoft. And, of course, all about Microsoft.com is where Mary Jo Foley hangs her hat at ZDNet.com. And between the two of them, man, there ain't nothing that don't go down in Redmond they don't know about. They are the kings. And today...
Yes.
We're waiting because an insider build went out yesterday for Redstone 4, but...
Well, not exactly.
Oh, so what?
Yeah.
What would... So, you know, we're doing security now, and Steve Gibson's talking about the new Clean Windows Cleanupper tool or whatever, and he says it's going to be in the... First of all, he says the Spring Creators Update.
Yep.
I had to gong him for that.
Probably not the name.
And then he said it comes out today, and then I said, well, hold on there.
It was supposed to.
So what happened?
We don't know.
Okay, there you go. Thanks for joining us on Windows Weekly today. And
I've spent the past 2 days trying to find that out. But if you look at the blog post, actually, you'd have to go back in time 2 weeks ago. So when Microsoft originally released 17.133, I think is the build number, to the fast ring, they put out a blog post, and then since then they've updated the blog post 4 times. One of them was about the slow ring update. One of them was about the release preview rollout of that build. I don't remember what one of the other ones is, but the one this week they updated it because there's a CU, like a KB, whatever the number is, cumulative update to this build. It's not unprecedented for Microsoft to release a CU of a Windows 10 version, or I guess a feature update before its public release. But this one was unexpected on Microsoft's behalf, from what I can see. And if you look at the list of things that they mention some pretty serious-looking but vaguely described security vulnerabilities that they patched in Windows and in various Windows components. And I think that might be why the public release has been delayed.
So, first of all, we should say Microsoft never publicly gave a date when they'd roll out Redstone 4.
Oh, I thought they never said Patch Tuesday.
No, all they said was April. And we kind of assume Patch Tuesday because in the past they have done this at least once on a Patch Tuesday with another version of the Creators Update. But, I couldn't remember, and I was trying to look this up, if they ever actually do a build that they push out to mainstream users before they issue a cumulative update. In other words, does there have to be a cumulative update to RTM before it actually starts rolling out? That's what I didn't know.
Does there have to be one?
Right. Like, it seems like there always has been one, right? Because RTM doesn't actually happen simultaneous with the rollout. Like, RTM happens a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks ago. They don't call it RTM. We do. Then they keep patching that, right, and fixing it.
Yeah, for sure. But a couple things to this is it's not unprecedented, for sure. My cat just jammed my microphone into my chest.
It's like,
Yeah, just a little.
Have they been talking on Skype, Sriracha and your cat? Have they liked it?
yeah, they've been chatting.
Yeah, no wonder she likes it here so much. But, the timeline has been getting compressed over these releases, right? So the delta between the RTM date, which we never really get to hear about, but we can at least look back at the day that thing hit, the fast ring. And the public release has been getting shorter and shorter. And in this case, somebody had pointed out to me on Twitter, they said, with the previous release, the public deployment started 1 week after Patch Tuesday, and maybe that's the normal schedule. And I don't disagree that that's what happened in the past, but that wasn't the plan here. And I agree, Mary Jo said they've never publicly said anything. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. But I've heard now from multiple sources that the intention was this past Tuesday was going to be the day for the start of it, not the broad, if you want to get it as an enthusiast, whatever, that kind of thing. And then, obviously it happens in tiers, and it's based on system compatibility and their understanding of which people or which computers are going to have the best experience and so forth. So it's not a big deal. I mean, in the scope of 6 months between now and the next release, and in the scope of its 18-month support lifecycle or whatever it is, this thing's still going to, it's going to come out in roughly the same fashion as it would have ever. Yeah. But it's just kind of interesting because I sort of feel like something unexpected happened. Someone on Twitter, again, said, do you think this was a matter of bad timing? I think I would put that slightly differently. This might have been a matter of really good timing, because when you press, you don't press anything, but, when you make the ISO for this version, this is a permanent thing, right? You're talking about feature updates that come, cumulative updates that come out every month, quality updates, as we call them. Those things are installed after the fact. And so the final, the RTM version of this thing, they may be adjusting that now to be something that's more secure than it would have been otherwise, which is a good thing, because 3 months down the road or whatever, someone might install that and immediately be compromised if that thing wasn't fixed out of the box. And so it's not a bad thing. I mean, it's just
it's a good thing. I know, because I remember from years of covering Windows, stuff would slide. And in the old days, they'd miss ship deadlines by months, right? And every time that happened, people would start being like, oh, God, when is this coming out, right? And I used to say to people, hey, would you rather have a really buggy product with lots of problems, but you have it? Or would you rather have Microsoft try to get it as right as they can get it, and then you have it?
That's right. And, right? Thanks to the ability to update Windows now, this thing never stands still. It's, Windows 98 or whatever release might come out in whatever, month and year. And it kind of sat there untouched. I mean, they did have Windows Update, obviously, but they weren't doing the types of updating that they're doing now. I think the fact that they did kind of hold us back suggests that this was pretty serious, because, like you said, you can very easily update Windows, and often they have before the public release anyway. So this is the day one experience of everything electronic. You turn it on and it updates. It's just the way it is. And I think this one was serious enough that this might explain what happened.
Want to hear another thing I figured out too? This is interesting. So last week, Microsoft did a very short blog post. Well, it was actually part of a longer blog post where they had all the announcements for the week for Azure and Windows Server together. And one of the things listed there is Windows Server 1803 general availability. This is last week, right? And so I'm like, wait, is it generally available? And so I had a couple people check MSDN and the Volume Licensing Center, and it's not there, but they actually had the GA announcement for that last week. So server is missing also, if client is missing. Right. So, and one of the things they patched in yesterday's cumulative update, it involves Windows Server too. Like that whole list of security updates that are vaguely referenced. It's for Edge, Windows Client, Windows Server, Windows Data Center. So it could be the same set of things, right, that are affecting both server and client if client was supposed to be out.
Yep. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. They're based on the same core, et cetera. So,
right.
Well, yeah, I didn't realize they'd never said that it was going to be out.
No, they never said that.
Leo, let me introduce you to your co-hosts.
We make stuff
somebody
up
on Twitter was like, I don't. Microsoft never said. Where did you hear this? And I said, well, I can't give you the phone number of the guy I talked to. But I feel really good about that information.
But if on the other hand, if they haven't. If they haven't committed to that publicly,
no.
There's no
of course,
obligation,
of course.
and in fact, there's no loss. It's not like anybody's. The only people who are going to say, "Where is it?" are people listening to this show or read your column.
Insiders who were assuming yesterday at 1:00 Eastern it was going to be out. They were like waiting, and then it didn't happen, and they were like, "Wait, where is it?"
But the reason this is interesting. It's kind of multifaceted. There's the stuff we already talked about. Just that something clearly bad happened, right? They were apprised of something that was unexpected because they had, whatever they've said publicly, they've had their own internal schedule. My cat just did this.
I know. I'm watching mine too. He's ready to
She just did this weird thing with her leg, out in the air. I don't know. And she launched calculator in front of my screen. Watch out.
Nice.
So. I don't know how I have a calculator button on my keyboard. So I've lost complete track of what I was talking about. Oh, the other thing was just, again, with Redstone 4, there has been a lot of uncertainty around the final name of the product, which, again, doesn't matter a whole hell of a lot, but whatever, it's a thing. And then there's the fact that for the first time in Windows 10's history, they have not ever had a reviewers workshop or handed out a document that said, here's what we're doing in this release. I mean, here we are. This thing could have started, and maybe tomorrow or yesterday, rather, they would have provided this stuff to us. But I've never seen anything like, hey, here's what you can expect in the next release of Windows. We heard you like to write about it occasionally.
But maybe you know what?
You don't want to cover this.
Is there anything we don't know that's in there? I don't think so, right? And it's a kind of a small release in terms of comparatively.
Look, as a blogger, I am obviously a lazy human being. I guess what I'm asking is, rather than make me go back through the many blog posts they put out over the last several months describing new things in that build and then comparing it to a product that I may or may not be running to see if it in fact made it into that product, it behooves them to, to want accurate information.
Make your life easier. Yes, well, I agree. No, I agree. I agree in theory, but I also kind of feel like when you look at this particular release, compared to some of the past releases, there's not a lot of there. Like, people who are like, I need this release. I'm like, okay, what do you need in this release? Because I feel like Redstone 4 doesn't have a ton of things that would be super compelling to a large scale audience. Like timeline, okay. Like that'll be fun for some people who liked task view, right? But is there anything in there that you're like, I have to have this right now? Emoji picker now.
It kind of strikes me that really what's going on is that you guys are living in the past. That you're thinking, no, but we are all this way. We're all attached to this idea that there's these big, that there's a yearly, there's like the new version of Windows.
Right.
But there is a new version of Windows.
Yeah, but it's not that, I mean, I think you nailed it, Mary.
Well,
it's not that big a deal.
I'm not denying what you just said, but I would add that
Microsoft wants to downplay this, don't they? Maybe.
Well, I don't know if they want to downplay
actually, I would say if that's
but
the
not
reason
giving
why
it a name downplays it.
No, there is a name. We just haven't heard it yet.
Oh.
I mean, there is going to be a name.
There'll be a name? Okay.
Yeah, there'll be something.
No, it's Microsoft that, if anything, is kind of overplaying typically the content of these updates, right?
Okay, all right.
They usually do a lot of marketing around here's what's new in this release.
Yeah.
That's what makes this one so unusual.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking is maybe they want it to be just, look, it's Windows 10. Just, and we're going to keep it up to date. We'll add fresh stuff, at least twice a year, but it's Windows 10. It's not Windows 10.1. It's not,
I am with you.
Service Pack
and
2.
I thought they would go that way at some point. Just, how like when you get an Android update on your phone, you're like, yeah, I know there's some stuff in there, but who really cares, right? It's like, as long as it doesn't slow my phone down or wreck it, I don't care,
Yeah.
It's possible with this recent reorganization that we will move to something like that. Mary Jo has often talked about the need for like an R2 release where every other one is not a big deal. This one qualifies, as we were just discussing. There really isn't a lot in the way of big new features there. It's just unusual. I mean, not just because of the break with the norm. I mean, things have been evolving. Like I said, the time difference between here's RTM, which they never say, and here's the general availability, which they also never say, has been going down over time. I think we're comfortable with that. It's just the sheer lack of communication on this particular release has been unprecedented. It's
unusual. I will give you that. Yeah. And then, like things are leaking out too. Like last week, well, we're going to talk about the ARM stuff later in the show, but one of the things that also leaked out last week, or maybe it was an intentional drop of information, they talked about eSIM plans being available in the store as of Redstone 4. They publicly said that last week, but I'm like, has anybody actually tested that in an insider build or as part of an insider build? Because it's going to, I mean, maybe that's not a thing you would test, but.
I'm sorry, what are we testing?
The eSIM plans, for
I mean
those PCs.
Right. So I don't think I can bring this up here. Nope. So I saw on one of my computers, a laptop, probably a data plan thing, like a store app, right? And Microsoft's kind of had something like that for a while. Remember they were going to do Wi-Fi sign-ins and
I do remember that.
Add money to your account and whatever. And they eventually ported that over to cellular accounts. I don't think I've ever used it. The only computer I have that could possibly work with it would be that NVX2, which is not an eSIM, but it's it could conceive. Well, could it though? Actually, it probably couldn't, right? Because the point behind the eSIM is that it's already there and it could work with virtually anything. And so you should be able to switch back and forth between different mobile carriers without swapping out the card. Is there an eSIM-based PC in the market today? I don't think there is. Maybe that's the issue.
Yeah.
I'm going to look into this now. That's interesting. I hadn't really considered that. I'm going to kind of talk myself through that because, if you go back about a year ago-ish, when Microsoft first announced always connected PCs, there's a lot of commingling of ARM and Intel and how these things are going to differ and so forth. And my assumption all along, just based on the way they discussed it, was that the differentiator between what we had before in Windows and what we have now with always connected PCs is in part the eSIM part of it. That one of the requirements of getting this logo, if that's what it is that you have an eSIM in the computer.
But so, of course, I have a regular SIM. We have a regular SIM.
That's right. And that's exactly right. So when I saw that, and I asked HP about it, I said, hey, I thought eSIM was a requirement of the spec. And they were kind of confused by that. And they said, no, it's not a requirement. So I went back and looked at the way Microsoft described it. And actually, it's kind of measly in the way they did it. The way they said it was that some number of PC makers, I don't remember the exact ones, obviously, have committed to releasing Intel-based always connected PCs with MSEC technology in within whatever time frame. And then the ARM-based ones, they don't actually ever say eSIM. They just talk about LTE advanced and whatever it is, and it may just be that the Qualcomm chipset they're using in the PCs doesn't have that on the silicon, and that this support will probably come in the next gen version or whatever. But as it turns out, if you have a Qualcomm, well, at least the NVIDIA, you don't have to have an eSIM. If you go back and read the original, they talk around it. Like it looks like they're saying you do need it, but you really don't.
Okay.
And so I think that what this is a transition, and the expectation is in the future that, like phones will do the same thing. They'll switch over to an eSIM system, or they have phones like the Pixel I have has an eSIM and a SIM slot. That's actually pretty useful, right? Because you could, that's like having a 2-SIM system, basically.
Is the iPad eSIM the same thing? I mean, is it an industry standard?
It is an industry standard, but I don't think Apple uses it. I think the Apple SIM is called an Apple SIM, and I think it's the same idea.
Right. But of course, it's Apple.
It's Apple. And, it probably works just as well knowing Apple. I'm sure it's very seamless, and Apple has enough clout that they have any carrier would be crazy to not want to work with Apple on this.
There are a few hitches. For instance, I don't know if this is still the case, but when the eSIM first came out in the iPad, if you attached it to AT&T, they'd lock it.
Yes,
Oh,
well,
wow.
okay, but that's
Which really was annoying because now you have a locked iPad.
wireless carriers are evil. This is only one example.
Yeah. I think you could replace. I think the solution was there was an actual SIM. So the eSIM you're talking about, this is the more modern eSIM that Apple uses also, which has no SIM card. It's just a chip.
It's literally embedded on the chipset.
Yeah. I don't know if they can lock that too.
Well, it's funny. So the Pixel 2 XL is a Snapdragon 835. It's the same processor that's in the NVX2. It, like I said, it does have an eSIM. The newer Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus, which is on the 845, to my knowledge, does not have an eSIM. I think that's just a standard SIM slot. I don't think there is an eSIM. Yeah, I don't believe so. And so I think maybe it's up to the, Samsung obviously makes their own chipsets and their own boards and things, and they accommodate two different processor types. Maybe they go their own route. I don't know. But I think it's fair to say that the industry overall will adopt this because it makes sense. Like it's like USB or anything else. You don't want to have your own thing. You want to have the thing that works with everybody.
Well, and the carriers will push you to it, and there's a benefit because then it's cross-carrier support easily for the customers.
As a huge benefit. I mean, even just from like the perspective of the different SIM card sizes and how goofy that could be if you pop open a tray. And
it should be software. I mean, the SIM card is an antiquated technology, frankly.
Yeah.
The idea that, but on the other hand, it has an advantage. Wait a minute, come to think of it, because I get new phones all the time, and I move my SIM, and it's just kind of nice. So there is an advantage to that. I guess you could do that in software too. Software is very flexible.
That's what Bill Gates always said.
It's also easy to lock.
Magical.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I'm just going to chill. I'm going to relax. Do you have a thought about when 1803 will appear?
No, and I, like I said, for the past couple of days, I've been kind of asking around, well, what's going on? And the silence has been kind of deafening, I have to say.
Is there a showstopper? Is that what you think? I know Sriracha does.
Says yes.
Is that Sriracha? Really?
He says yes, there is.
Oh, okay.
No, we don't know. Like I said, the last thing Microsoft ever said on this publicly, and this was only semi-officially, was it's going to come in April. Because usually what happens is if something's called 1803, it means RTM is in the third month, which would be March, and it starts rolling out the next month. So I would be surprised if it doesn't roll out in April. That would be very alarming and interesting. But maybe it'll be tomorrow. Who knows?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking. In other words, it could happen next Tuesday, I guess, if for some reason we believe that releases have to happen on Tuesdays. But if this cumulative update is addressing the problem that caused the delay, they might need a couple of days to ensure that everything is fixed. But there's no reason it couldn't happen tomorrow night or Friday or whatever.
Right.
Seriously, Kat.
This is becoming the kitty cat show.
Like both of us, our cats are like, whoa.
There's something I must, the arm of the microphone makes like a certain squeak sound when I pull it over from the hinges or whatever. And the cat will often come running when that happens. And it's like when I do Duolingo, she hears me talking to nobody, and she assumes I'm talking to her.
Yep.
And I think that's my theory. I'm a cat psychologist.
There is one bit of good news on this front.
Yeah.
On the Redstone forefront. We should bring this up because you guys wrote about it on Thurrott. We've been talking about PWAs a lot, and that being a feature of Redstone 4. And the first, not the very first, but a bunch of new PWAs are starting to show up in the Windows Store now. So this is going to happen. Like when Redstone 4 is out, PWAs are going to be supported. And there's quite a number of them starting to show up in the store. And we knew Microsoft was going to do this. They were going to go out and start working with developers and trying to get them to bring their apps to the store as a PWA. Some of the ones in there now are like Travel Zoo, ZipRecruiter's in there, Men's Warehouse. There's quite a number of them. So that's good. It means it's going to happen.
Travel Store is my travel agent.
Oh, is it really?
Wow. Yeah.
Nice.
Huh.
Yeah, some of these I
I'm
don't
really
know.
excited about PWAs. I
Yeah,
really
they're
feel
coming.
like this fulfills that cross-platform promise. The Windows is being demoted premise, which is that it doesn't matter really what operating system you're using, as long as they all support PWA, and it looks like the big ones will. Linux. I haven't heard any Linux PWA news, but
but think about how actually,
not that
there would have to be
matters.
some platform support.
Yeah.
If you use Chrome, well, actually, I don't think it works that way on Linux. I mean, it'd be nice if
smart to
Chrome
do it
on
on
Linux.
It'd be smart to do it on
that
Linux
ability.
because that's always the knock against Linux is the limited application.
Yeah, this could solve problems everywhere.
Yeah, and it's certainly
Sure.
if Apple and Google and Microsoft all support it, and it looks like they will.
So you know what though? Someone raised an interesting question. I think they misunderstood what they were asking, but it led me down this other path, which was if Google. What he said was if Google really supported PWAs, they would put all of their apps in the store, in the Windows Store, the Microsoft Store, and that's kind of the wrong way of thinking about it. Google very much supports PWAs, except that they don't actually have many PWAs, do they? So in other words, Google supports PWAs in its platforms, third-party apps,
but not for them.
But not their own apps, right? And so what I said, my response to that was actually, if Google is going to fully support PWA, that means that Gmail and Google Maps and Google Search and whatever, those things need to be PWAs. And all Google would have to do to put those things in the store is edit a couple of lines of text in a manifest file. It'd be very easy to get that into the Microsoft Store.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an interesting kind of chicken and the egg problem when you think about it, because Google is arguably the single biggest destination on the web, and them making their own apps into PWAs, I think, is what would signal this shift.
It would, but
more
it
than
kind
anything.
of begs the question, what's a PWA for? And if you have unlimited resources, writing a native app for every platform is certainly the way to do it, right? And control it.
Like, I don't know what Google uses to make their websites and all that kind of stuff, but obviously today they have different teams of people working on discrete mobile apps for Android and for iOS. But they have a kind of a rich history of doing, they're on the web, and so the web supports, Windows, Mac, Chrome OS, whatever.
Whoa.
Is that the cat?
Sriracha. Yep.
Your cat is a terrorist.
He is a terrorist.
It's Sriracha. I keep calling him Sriracha. Sriracha is
He's like hot sauce, but his name is Sriracha.
Sriracha. Okay, sorry, Sriracha.
No, it's
Maybe
okay.
that's why he's upset.
Yeah, it could be it.
I'm not super technical on this, but you could, as a developer, create PWAs that ran on top of .NET Core or something, right? Or ASP.NET Core.
Mm-hmm.
You can use whatever technologies. I'm sure Microsoft already has something like Blazor or something, or use .NET technologies to create PWAs, or you just use pure JavaScript on open source platforms, whatever. It seems like Google should be able to do this, to improve their web apps to become PWAs, and it would solve problems for them. They get automatic access on every platform. It just seems like such a no-brainer.
So
maybe they don't care.
Mondog asks,
Right.
Well, in a way, I think Google doesn't care because they want to control those apps. In fact, they've already gone after people who distribute the Google Apps Store and the apps on non-approved Android devices. So there's a reason for that. But my question is, actually, this is from Londog in our chat room. I think it's a good question. Mm-hmm. If PWAs take off, what do they need the Microsoft Store for, right? You could make a PWA from the web, right?
Yeah, so this is an issue of discoverability, right? And this is something that comes up a lot. And so, in fact, I ran into someone, I don't know if it was Twitter or somewhere, he was very anti-Microsoft because Microsoft was forcing, PWAs to be in the store, like this was some kind of a limitation. And so the problem with app stores is that visibility is often tough. But this is a problem in popular app stores. The problem in the Microsoft store is completely different. We don't have enough apps. So actually putting apps in the store could help the platform, could help that store look a little more professional. And it might not be a horrible place for a Windows user to find apps.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, what you want is those apps to be available in both places. And so meaning on the web and in the store. So on Android, you can find PWAs only on the web, but you can't find them in the store. Google has said that that's going to change. They're going to follow Microsoft's model and make them available in both places. Microsoft has also said, by the way, that in the future they'll make them available from the web.
This is great in a way, because this moves us back to the old days. Because the store was a walled garden. At least Apple's version of the store is a walled garden.
Right.
And, and the idea, I mean, I always loved downloading apps from the web. There's security issues and so forth.
There could be some benefits to having a curated collection of known safe apps for normal users in the store, and then power users like us could go to mobile.twitter.com because we know exactly where it is and just go get it.
Right.
There's no reason for Microsoft's just taking a different. They're just going in different orders. That's all. Google started the way they started, but they're going to put it in the store too, right? I think we might have talked about this. I think one of the reasons it's taking a while is that they're converging the Play Store and what used to be the Google, whatever they call the Chrome Web Store or whatever that was called, which they're going to get rid of. And I think as they get rid of that, what they intend for is for the web apps to be in that store as well, the Play Store.
Yeah. I understand people's confusion.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I mean, but we're seeing it through sort of our biased lens. Like, why would Microsoft force us to go to the store?
And I don't think that, Microsoft. I think it's the opposite. I think it's it's a move towards openness that's remarkable from Microsoft.
Yeah, and it's important to it's also like a cultural thing at Microsoft. I mean, I think this shift to these web apps is something that some people are going to go down kicking and screaming on, and by positioning it as part of the store platform, I think that's part of what helps make this okay. Because a PWA just came in as this thing where the Edge team said, yeah, we'll just we'll install them right from the browser and we'll bypass that store thing that you have that's so central to the platform. I think they might have gotten some pushback on that. And so I think this helps make it happen.
Very interesting.
He's all about the PWAs.
Yep.
So Redstone 4, whenever that happens, includes what does that mean? It has support for PWAs. It has the service workers, or it does. But what does that mean? It's service workers.
Yeah, it means that the Edge rendering engine, the Edge engine, whatever, supports those technologies that are required to make a PWA. So service workers, obviously the core thing. Offline notifications.
So whatever people think they've been experiencing at this point as a PWA isn't.
The hosted web apps are basically PWAs, right? I mean, in large
it's the same.
part.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I would say less sophisticated, but yes.
But we'll get a better idea of what this has to offer.
Well, I mean, the thing is, so in Windows 10 today, if you were just running Microsoft's web browser, you weren't experiencing PWAs at all.
Right.
You could go to a website that was a PWA. You could pin it to your taskbar using Edge, which is a terrible experience because the button thing that you create has nothing to do with the app window that launches. They're completely separate. I have no idea why that is. And it wouldn't run offline. Not that, I mean, honestly, the things that I use that might be PWAs, I'm going to want to be online anyway, like my email app, a calendar, Twitter, whatever it is. But that capability wasn't there. So you had to be online. It's just a web shortcut. It's not a...
Yeah. Does... It makes more sense in mobile than it does in desktop, or does it? What's the argument for PWAs on the desktop?
I think it makes as much sense on both. I mean, the way maybe to think of it is, what websites do you visit today? Would it make sense for that thing to be like an app? One of the complaints some people have about Windows 10 is the Mail app is not particularly professional. Let's look at that kind of big buttons, touch first UI kind of thing. And then you look at the new Outlook.com on the web and you think, wow, this thing's actually really nice. Now, if you're using Chrome, you could just pin a shortcut to Outlook.com or as I do to Google Inbox to your taskbar. And that thing it's a web app. It's not a PWA, neither one of them. They won't work offline. But they're there when you're online and they work like a website, but they're in their own little window. So that it works like an app. You can alt tab between them. It's nice. It's a good experience. But the PWA thing puts it over the top because then it does work offline. That may not be super important from an email client, although you can make the case that, when you might need that. But it is the case for lots of other app types. If you had an online graphics editor, for example, you might want to use that offline. if you had an online markdown editor that I might use, or a text editor, or a word processor, if that thing was a PWA and it could work offline, that's an app. You know, we don't worry about most of the apps we're using on our Windows computers working offline. We don't really think about it. We pretty much assume they're going to, unless they require online access, obviously. This is what brings that capability to the web app. It's just it's a native-ish, for lack of a better term, kind of experience. Mm-hmm. And today, I would say, you know, again, with these Chrome shortcuts, when you're online, it's pretty much there. It doesn't have the online bit, the offline bit. Sorry.
And it also, if you're a PWA, you're going to be able to pick up more things that are right now features of a UWP app, and if you want to, right, as a developer. I mean, things like notifications and that kind of thing will also work with your PWA.
Yes.
So that's another enticement to work with Microsoft. Put it in the store, you know.
Yeah, you could do the minimum, just the manifest file, and it will appear in the store.
Yep.
Potentially. You could petition to have it put in the store too, by the way. You can apply just like any other app developer.
Right.
But it works a lot like the desktop bridge when you think about it. The simplest thing you can do to a desktop app to get it into the store is go through whatever the process is, run the wizard, make sure everything works, and put it in the store. And you don't take advantage of any special features that are part of the store platform or Windows 10. But you can optionally add support for live tiles, notifications, whatever the list of native features are. And PWAs will basically work that same way. I mean, you can optionally choose, if you feel like the user base size is big enough to warrant it, to support additional features that might be specific to Windows.
Yep.
I don't know.
Like I think it was Richard Hay. Richard Hay this morning was saying something about you can now do something with Share and the Twitter PWA that you couldn't do before, that they were integrated.
Yeah, so I wonder if that's, I don't have it installed on this. I'm using Tweetin now, but I wonder if he meant near Share or just the Share.
I think he just meant the Share.
Experience.
Yeah, Share experience. Yep.
Yeah, so now it's, you know, last two Windows versions, there's a Share window that kind of goes in the middle of the screen.
Yeah.
Okay, so in other words, let me see how that would look.
So like if you wanted to share something via the Twitter app.
Yeah, and then whatever share targets or email, you know, whatever, the Skype, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It'll be nice.
We'll see.
It'll be good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, 64 bits coming to my nice Windows NV X2.
Could we please waste 90 minutes on this topic?
Yes.
Because this is the most convoluted craziness on the face
What's
of the
the
earth.
Story?
Hold on. I need to just gong him before we start, just to get him in line on this one.
Well,
a little gong.
And I have to say, 32-bit apps don't run so hot, so I'm a little nervous about 64-bit.
Yeah, I think people think there's some magic bullet that's going to make everything make sense on Windows 10 on ARM, and I can assure you this is not it. So, Windows 10 on ARM is a 64-bit version of the operating system. A lot of a lot of normal people probably don't have any understanding of 32 versus 64-bit, whatever. But if you're running a 64-bit version of Windows 10 on Intel or AMD today, you can run both 32-bit and 64-bit software, right? You don't have to worry about it. I would imagine today still that most people install Office from the web or from a disk are installing the 32-bit version of Office. I bet that's still the case. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about it. There are different advantages and disadvantages to going 64-bit in that case. I think Excel can take advantage of the memory space and so forth. That might be good, but I think you also lose compatibility with 32-bit extensions or plugins or whatever they call it.
The only argument I ever saw for 64-bit was to access more than 4 gigs of RAM, and since these WOA machines don't tip, well, yours had 8 gigs, right? I don't know why.
Yeah. Right. And
Did you see all 8 gigs?
Yeah. I maybe they were hoping for a good review. I think the argument would be an app could take advantage of up to 4 gigs, but now you could have
multitasking.
You could have a couple of apps. So that might be important for things like Chrome or Photoshop or whatever.
So the OS was 64-bit?
It's always been 64-bit. Yeah, that was always going to be the case.
Got it.
And so the way I recall it from the beginning, it turns out to be the case, which is that it will only run 32-bit Intel code, meaning x86. ever. Like they're never going to add the ability to run 64-bit Intel, like x64, AMD 64 code on this system. That's never happening. Right. And it has something to do with the Windows on Windows architecture. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're never going to do that, but they are going to support 64-bit ARM apps. Now, what does that mean? So it means two things. Actually, it might mean, maybe someday it will mean three things, but let's say two things. There are desktop applications, of which there will be zero, because why on earth would anyone compile a 64-bit ARM desktop application and release it just for this one platform? I don't think we're going to see a lot of that stuff, but you never know. If it takes off, it's a possibility, but I think that's going to be very rare. The more common occurrence is going to be you're a store app developer, and in your little checkbox that you have for targeting, you can choose x86, x64, and today you can choose ARM32. It probably just says ARM. I don't even know what it says, but eventually you'll also have an ARM 64-bit 64 checkbox, and the store is smart enough to give you the right one. So if you made a store app that only runs on Intel and AMD systems, it probably compiled to x86 and x64. And if you install that on an ARM system, you'll get the x86 version. That's how that's going to work. If you compiled it to ARM, you will get that version. That will be better, right? It doesn't require any emulation. It's going to run natively. It's going to give you the best performance. If the developer chose x60, I'm sorry, it's so hard to get this up straight. AMD 64 in the future as one of the targets, I would imagine you would get that, right? It's something the user doesn't have to think about.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So the complexity here, other than everything I just babbled through, is what about, I don't know, Adobe Photoshop is a 64-bit Intel type x64 application. Mm-hmm. There's no 32-bit version. How do we get that thing on ARM? Like what's the path?
So wouldn't the path be Adobe has to recompile it to be an ARM app? Yeah. Right.
And they could do it to the desktop, and that's where this desktop compatibility might make some sense. Now, this assumes that Adobe uses Visual Studio, and it doesn't use any supporting libraries that couldn't make this transition. I don't know how complex this is. I've had people tell me completely opposite things on this front, that it would be very easy for even an application the scope and size of Adobe Photoshop to be recompiled for ARM, and that it would work fine. Slow probably, but fine. Yeah. And I've had other people tell me this is impossible, that there's just too many supporting libraries. There's no way that's all going to work. Mm. And so I don't know the answer. My gut tells me we're never going to see Photoshop on. Right. I just don't see the.
But you know what?
Don't see it.
On this kind of a system with the level of power that it has, is Photoshop the thing you would want to even try to run on this thing?
No, the answer is no, it's not. And
I think that's the real reason.
It's a natural selection thing, right?
Yeah,
this isn't the next big gaming PC platform. This is
you're not going to port Crysis to it either.
No.
Right.
This is a platform, like they keep saying, for road warriors, salespeople, students. To some extent, it's for people who need the battery life more than they care about running.
It runs Office pretty darn well.
I know. Yeah,
it's usable for Office. I mean, I haven't tried to open massive spreadsheets or anything, but
so
how does it run Chrome though? Because
not well at all.
So I've seen conflicting things on this. I've seen some people saying it runs Chrome fine, I can use it, and other people are like, nope.
It's usable, but it's very slow. I mean, Edge is much nicer than Chrome.
Yeah.
What I've seen is that the basics are always fine. Microsoft Word, if you're just writing, it's surprising. It feels full speed, even though this. What's that?
Is it okay if you're just writing?
Well, it depends what app you're using.
It's fine. Microsoft Word, like Word specifically, works fine.
Somehow Microsoft's apps work very well.
Well, but not always. So one of the things I would do in an article like you would is you insert a hyperlink, right? And so when you do that, it's Control K. The dialog box pops up, and then you paste in the thing, and you hit enter, and you go. Try that on Windows 10 and now. It's really slow, and it's one of those goofy things where you type it along, you're like, wow, this actually works great. I might need to revise my opinion of this thing and write about it. And then I go, control. Let me link to this article I wrote. You're like, oh, this thing's still a piece of crap. Like it's aggravating like that. And so, to the point of like Photoshop ever appearing on this platform, the one thing I would say that's kind of nice about Windows 10 on ARM is that it is what Windows 10s should be, which is, maybe 90% of the time you can get by with the stuff that's there, Edge and Word and whatever. But every once in a while, even if you're a traveling salesman or a traveling businessman or an executive, every once in a while, you have to do something like I would want to do, like open Photoshop Elements, just to do the one thing to the one graphic and get that thing out the door and move on with my life. The fact that you can do it slowly is so much better than you not being able to do it at all.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think it'd be nice if, I don't know I just don't think it's going to happen, but Photoshop Elements in the store, it'd be cool if that could somehow be transmogrified into something that would work on. I don't think it's going to happen.
Major improvements to sets in the RS5 build. This just
moving right along. Yeah. Yep. So we got a new Redstone 5 build last week, and the major new thing that's in it is more features for sets. And sets is that grouping tool that Microsoft has. It's like Groupie from Stardock. It allows you to manage windows. I always call it, when I'm doing a shorthand explanation, a Windows management tool. So there's quite a bit more functionality in it. It was kind of bare bones before, but now, since Redstone 5, everybody who has Redstone 5 has sets now. You can do things like Alt-Tab to switch between groups of tabs. There's settings for sets that are part of this build, and you can have like 2 File Explorer windows grouped together now. Woo! Or Notepad.
You know what the best thing is, though? I think they added I don't have an RS5 system up right now, but I think they added Alt-Tab multitasking, which goes back to the thing we were talking about a few weeks ago, where it's, even though they're in tabs in a window, I think you can Alt-Tab through them now. And the more I think about it, the more I think that might be the best approach.
Yeah, Alt-Tab to switch between groups of tabs is in there now. So, and dragging and dropping tabs within and between sets works now.
Right.
So if you're somebody who's interested in sets that we're pretty sure is going to be part of Redstone 5, you should definitely, if you have a system that you can put on Redstone 5, try this out, because now you can actually do real things with sets, which you really couldn't before.
Yeah, it might actually be usable.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, this is a nice
and there's a couple
feature.
Other little things, but it's like, they're just starting to get Redstone 5 going. So this is the first, big feature that we know is going to be in Redstone 5, for sure.
Screen clips too, right?
Yeah. Talk more about that, Paul, because I know Raph found this, right? Didn't he?
Yeah, Raph likes to dig into builds and finds things that Microsoft hasn't surfaced yet. And he found this screen clips feature, which is, I refer to as yet another way to take a screenshot in Windows. Thanks, Microsoft. So I think they're
it's more for gamers, though, right? I'm thinking, right? Kind of like clips
actually,
in on the Xbox, or no?
No. It's you can. It's kind of stupid. Like, you can kind of just draw a circle on the screen or whatever shape, and it will clip that area, if you will. That's one of the features.
Well, we've had that, but it's been square in the past. So now it's circular.
So and obviously it supports the normal.
Now it's arbitrary. Well. Yeah, it's arbitrary.
So I like the look of this thing. It looks smart. It's got a little toolbar at the top, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, oh, that looks pretty cool. And, his guess is that we'll see this in the next couple of builds of RS5. That makes sense. And then, he posted the article, and someone on Twitter pointed out, they have this thing already. It's a garage project. And it is. So
it is?
This thing is graduating from the garage to Windows, and that is fairly rare, right? One of the issues with Microsoft's garage projects is that these things tend to peter out and disappear over time. And if you get too attached to something, sometimes. It's more likely for something in the garage to never leave the garage than it is to graduate to big Windows. So that's
what's
cool.
A funny thing? Just a contrary example. Office dictation, that thing they're building into the next versions of Office, that's a garage project too.
Yeah. Oh, maybe they're trying to justify or realize the research stuff, right? They put it.
I know.
It's smart.
Yep.
It's smart to use stuff like this.
It
It makes sense. You know?
Yep.
Yeah. So I wasn't aware of it either. You know. So when he pointed it out, I was like, oh, that's clearly it. The UI is exactly the same. It's the same product, same.
It's always it's a dilemma, though. We talk about it all the time. It's cool that you have multiple ways of doing the same thing in Windows. Like you have a choice, but then sometimes you're like, wait, should I use the snipping tool? Should I use Cloud Clipboard? Should I use this thing? It's like, okay, there's a lot of ways.
What's it called? Snippet or
snipping tool, isn't that?
I use that all the time. Yeah.
So I usually don't. I use keyboard shortcuts. Actually, there's a great utility in the Windows Store for taking screenshots that will save them to an arbitrary place. And so when I do the screenshots on the test system for the book, I save them to my desktop here so I can work on them. I like that kind of thing. But
yeah, you do so many. This is part of your work.
Yeah.
So
I
did the same thing when I did a lot of that. I had third-party tools because they're going to be better.
You know what's nice about the snipping tool is if you're on a tablet and don't have a keyboard, it works great, right? So you can even time it so that it goes 10 seconds or whatever. Then you can set up whatever you're trying to do, and it will take the screenshot. And it's the one tool that actually works without any keys. So I actually kind of like that aspect of the snipping tool. So I do use that from time to time.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. An ode to the snipping tool.
See, Mary Jo likes her notepad, and I like my screenshot applications.
Many RS5 app experiences are being shut down.
Hold on, Leo, I have a call. Could you guys hold on a second?
Well, no problem. Let's just...
So, sorry,
it's
this is
your cat calling,
Mark Zuckerberg on line 3, Mr. Surratt.
It's a work thing. I got to take it.
Well, this isn't work, that's for sure.
In the week after the Terry Myerson thing, I spent hours and hours and hours talking to people from Microsoft on the phone. And one of the many things that kind of swirled through the air during these conversations was two different people who told me that they had heard very directly that little app things that were going to be in RS5 had all been kind of canceled, and that those guys were all led into a room one by one and made the same deal, which was, you should sign up for the Edge team. What are you thinking? You know, and they all said no. And Brad pinged me yesterday, and he said, "Hey, I just got this source he has is fantastic." He's like, he just sent me this thing, and it says the guys who were working on the RS5 apps were all told that they should join the Edge team. And I was like, you got to write that up because I can verify it. And it's so we don't. This is again, there's a set of changes coming to which we are not yet privy fully, and we'll have some part of the story, I hope, by build, and I think we'll have some part of the story as the new fiscal year comes out. But we were just talking about this with Windows and how things are changing and what's going on, and a lot of the stuff is up in the air. But I think there's going to be a bit of shuffling going on, and priorities are going to be made, and some things are going to win out and some things are going to lose out. So I don't know what app experiences were canceled. I didn't hear anything specific like that. But I do know that there's going to be some shuffling going on. It's already started happening. So that's part of what's happening there.
So, this Edge thing doesn't surprise me in a lot of ways because Edge has been unsuccessful. We can all agree, I think. And yet Microsoft knows that the browser is one of the most important, if not the most important app on an operating system. So they are not going to, like I see people always say, like, they should just give up on Edge, and just join forces with Google and do Chrome. They're never going to do that. That's not going to happen, right? And the other thing
Oddly, even though I use Chrome, I don't want them to do that.
You don't? That's good. I mean, because I think what keeps browsers and any other kind of software competitive is to have multiple players.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. But the other thing to remember is, so after the reorg, Edge was moved under Joe Belfiore. And the reason it was moved there is because Joe's mission is to work on cross-platform experiences. So one of the biggest reasons Microsoft also is pushing Edge is it's giving it a way to have a play on mobile devices. And so if you install Edge on iOS or Edge on Android, the pitch is, so if you do that and you have a Windows PC, you're going to be able to have these better cross-platform experiences, not just sharing bookmarks, but pick up where you left off, and those kinds of things will be working across your platform. So that's another reason they're probably putting more people on Edge. This is their way to try to get a little more of a foothold in mobile.
Oh, they're putting people on Edge, Mary Jo. Let me tell you.
How many? Do you know any? Like, do you know how many?
No, I don't know. What I had heard, this is from one guy, was that on his team at least, nobody had agreed to go to Edge, and
they use their own engine, right? They're not using.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the other
Except
reason.
on iOS and Android, they're using their engines.
They don't have a choice on iOS.
Yeah, but on Windows, it makes sense for this because, again, this is what's going to be powering these PWAs. And Edge may have very little market or usage share, whatever, today. But if PWAs take off in Windows 10, that's going to change pretty dramatically. So I keep going back to this. I think it was Terry Myerson who said, over 50% of what everybody does on Windows is on the web. They can't just cede that to
I know. You can't.
To a third party.
No.
And for whatever it's worth, I mean, I keep running into roadblocks with Edge. I think I listed my issues a couple of weeks ago, whatever. But the mobile versions of Edge are great. Like, they're actually really good. I really like Edge on iOS and Android. Like, it's a nice app.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't mind Edge, and I'm forced to use it, of course, on this WoA machine. But it's not awful.
It's not.
I'd love to see it get better.
Real Laporte.
I don't like seeing Chrome eat the world. I mean, it's a bad thing, and Chrome is way too market dominant at this point. So I don't mind that. And I'm not a fan of Firefox, which is the chief competition. I'm not crazy about
I can't
Firefox.
put my finger on it.
I can't put my finger on it either.
The thing I don't like about Chrome is just the look and feel of it. It's got these kind of trapezoidal, tabs, and you can't
Edge
really.
Is pretty. Edge is very pretty.
Yeah, there's something. Edge looks very native. The quality of the text rendering is really nice, especially in the new version of Windows. Mary Jo loves this stuff when you mouse over the little graphical effects that you can see so easily. I think it's a pretty app. I mean, it's really nice.
No, it does look good. It does. I agree. And the text rendering is amazing, and the scrolling is really smooth on Windows 10. I mean, it's got all those things you want, but then there are always something you don't want or you need and you don't have.
Yeah, there's always that thing, and this is Microsoft's story these days.
There's always something there to remind you. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
There's
always something there. End of life for the anniversary update. What?
Yeah.
What? So,
if you recall, one of the things with Windows 10 is you only get 18 months of support for these different feature versions. So if you are not an enterprise or an education customer, yesterday was your last patch Tuesday if you're running 1607. So 1607 is the anniversary update that came out in July 2016.
But actually strikes me that there wouldn't be many people who would still be on it, because aren't you forced to take subsequent updates, or am I wrong?
Well, as a home user, you are.
It's only enterprises that are conceivably still back at 1607.
Some pro customers technically, I guess, could still be on this if they selected all the right options, right? And maybe wanted to stay on.
They'll be getting the new update. I don't think
they will
push it back past that.
Right, 18 months is, I think, as long as you can push it. Except, again, if you're enterprise or education, you get 6 more months. So you're going to keep getting patches for 1607 until October 9th this year. After that, that's it. You got to move to a newer version.
This doesn't actually affect very many people, right? Because
you know what? It's funny. I tweeted it yesterday, and all of a sudden people were like, "What? Oh my God, are you kidding me?" And I'm like, "Wait, people are on 1607."
Yeah.
You know who is, and I hear from these people, maybe it's just because it's the radio show all the time, though, people who can't update because their updates are stuck.
Right. I know. I heard it from a couple of those.
There's a lot of those, it turns out.
I know. They're like,
I
can't get past 1607.
Right. Oh, screw it. Who cares? I'm fine. And I say, no, you got to. You have to.
I know. If you can't for some reason,
I wonder how shocked they would be by 1803. It's not dramatically different, obviously.
No, that's the point. They don't feel like they're missing anything.
No. But some people want the newer updates, right? Like, and because of something with the driver or
well, but you also, for security reasons alone, you really don't want to be sitting on a 2-year-old update. You really don't.
No, you don't. And you want to make sure to be on something that gets patched. So you're done with patches as of now, right? Like that's your last patch yesterday.
Well, that actually sounds like a wonderful experience.
Yeah, it's Windows XP. It's parity with Windows XP.
Windows 10
finally,
with no updates.
How can I get that?
Exactly. Can I pay for that? That sounds interesting.
Buy that one. It's perfect just the way it is.
Right.
Moving on to the next wave. Is this a gonging moment, or are we gonna kind of?
No, I don't think so.
This is Paul Thurrott's vision for the future of computing.
Wow, I would not refer to it in such lofty terms, but again, in talking to Microsoft, and in one of the conversations reminded me of a conversation I had with them on the record at that time about their failure in mobile and how they were determined not to miss the next wave as they had missed mobile, which is how they thought of it. In other words, by not being able to participate in this new huge market, they really lost out. And you can see how they've lost out in things like Cortana, where it just doesn't get the traction that it could have had on mobile because it's stuck on the PC and it's just a smaller market. But it occurred to me recently, and I was kind of looking at the post-Myers and stuff, and what's the future here? And Windows plays a much smaller role, and blah blah blah, whatever. What does it look like for Microsoft on the client? And the thing I finally came to, which again, because I'm a genius, they've been talking about this for a year and a half, is this notion of the intelligent cloud and the intelligent edge. And what does that even mean, right? What is the intelligent edge? It's the client, obviously. But the interesting thing is there is a coming market that's going to do to mobile, I think, what mobile did to the PC, which is be a much bigger market and kind of explode things out in a way that, to that point, was unprecedented. And that market on the client side is IoT, right? That the market for smartphones is dramatically bigger than the market for PCs. But ultimately, we all have one phone, right? That one phone might be more personal than the PC. It might be something we have in our pocket all the time. We might be more engaged on that device because we're installing apps and looking at personal information, social networking, whatever. But it's still a one-to-one relationship, right? The thing that's interesting about IoT, the potential there, and this is huge for Microsoft because, they really want to be part of that next wave, is that you can have a many-to-one relationship with IoT devices, right? If you think about a smart home of the future where this stuff is just kind of built into everything, where these little sensors are in wall switches and thermostats and lights and whatever else in the house, like just in this one room I'm in right now, there could be 10 or 20 sensors. You go through a house, there could be dozens and dozens in your car, in your workplace, in public spaces, etc. It's not kind of exciting from a gadget perspective if you're like a personal technology enthusiast. I realize the notion of these little IoT boards is not particularly interesting. And that's a problem for me personally, for sure. But from Microsoft's perspective, we often talk about how Microsoft's future is in the cloud, and it is. But I think it's the other part of it too. And I think there is the potential for them to play a very big role in that part of the future as well. And that could be the next wave that they've been looking for. This is only one example, and it's not a great one, but that Cortana-powered thermostat, I don't know why I always want to say thermometer, which is beautiful with the glass and, is kind of a neat device, is an early example of this kind of thing. But I'm actually thinking kind of beyond that. I'm thinking more of just like literally UI-less sensors that you just know by virtue of you being you and using your voice, and you can issue commands and get answers, and it becomes a more personal and more conversational kind of a situation. But it's also something that happens in passing, right? Where this may be an interesting kind of technology maturity thing too, right? We all sit there at the table as a family looking at our own phones. You've seen these people in restaurants, right? It's 4 people.
It's remarkable.
They could, they're all like doing their own little thing. Yeah. Well, what if that stuff was just available to everyone, and that we could use it? I agree
with you, Paul. I think you nailed it with ambient computing. I mean, I
think it's an interesting thing, that it might get us past the screen, that we're
I think this is why
screen.
I know. And I think this is why they continue to invest in Cortana, even though so many outside observers keep saying, oh, this is a failure, right? Like there's only one Cortana speaker, right? There's one Cortana thermostat. But I think their idea is, what if we can embed Cortana into more devices and systems everywhere, right? So, we've seen them talk about this as a concept video, but the idea, you go into a conference room and you say, hey, Cortana, turn on the lights, call so-and-so. Can you take notes on this meeting? Can you distribute these documents to everybody who's here? These people. Right.
Exactly. And it just senses who they are. The other two things, think about Microsoft's big markets, big audience bases, customer bases, businesses, where it unique among all countries in the world, companies in the world, has the management infrastructure for devices that could be applied to this kind of things. If we're going to put sensors in office buildings, that company's going to want to manage that stuff. Microsoft does that really, really well. But the other one is developers. And one of the things Microsoft probably doesn't get enough credit for is always providing their developers with a path forward as well, right? We've had a lot of failures here for sure. I mean, I'm not going to discount that. But if you're what I think of as a .NET guy, someone who's come up through the ranks through .NET and the various .NET initiatives on the desktop, and now we have .NET Core and ASP.NET Core, of course, store apps and UWP and so forth, which are essentially .NET based. There's going to be a path forward. There already is an IoT Core kind of thing going on, of course. But I mean, there's going to be a path forward for those guys to leverage the skills they have with particular languages or SDKs to move forward into this world as well. And I think that's super important because you're not stranding anyone. You don't just have to support your Windows XP LOB app or whatever, for the end of time. You're the next version of the COBOL guy. Or whatever, you have a way forward. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a big theme at Build this year. Like last year is the first time they started really talking up intelligent edge. That was at Build 2017, right? And they've already hinted IoT is going to be a big theme at Build. And again, part of the reason they care a lot about this is because IoT all feeds the data back into the Microsoft cloud, right? And so ultimately, it's great for their cloud business because this is where they're doing their data analytics. If you're not doing it at the edge, you're at least feeding it back to the cloud and doing it there. So, we're going to hear about this.
There's a transition that occurs. I mean, we have Cortana on PCs. We have assistants on phones. We're buying little speakers and big speakers, and we're putting them in our house. And that's how it starts. I mean, eventually, that stuff just becomes parts of everything else. I use the example of wired Ethernet in a house. That's something people add to homes because homes have been there forever. A lot of new construction, especially if it's kind of an upscale thing, that's going to be part of the deal. It's as important to the wiring of the house as the electricity or the plumbing or whatever else. And in these sensor things, whatever form they take in the future, I think are going to be the same thing. They're not going to build a house without this stuff. This is going to be what defines a house. We think of it as a smart house, but in the future, it's just a house.
This is the trend all along. I mean, computing has gotten moved out from the center to the edge since computing became personal.
I think what makes sense, why this makes sense to me is that the issue, Microsoft has used the phrase the next wave a few times incorrectly, right? They referred to Windows Mixed Reality as the next wave. That's ludicrous. They've referred to Windows 10 on ARM as the next wave. Those things are just part of a wave. They're not the next thing. Like, I think to be the next wave, it has to dwarf the previous wave. I think that's the point. Mobile dwarfed the PC. Web, in some ways, can dwarf mobile, but the cloud, this intelligent edge, intelligent cloud thing, the future. I think this is what dwarfs where we are today.
And who has more expertise in this than Microsoft? Well, maybe IBM. It could be the renaissance of IBM.
I know. Yeah.
There are other companies that can compete in this area. Google has an IoT platform as well.
Well, every smart company is, I think, completely on track with what you're saying and working on it. I mean, that's pretty obvious.
The other thing that's nice about this is interoperability is high, right? I think we're moving past the era of
silos,
individual platforms, and silos. And there's going to be a pushback, and mobile especially. Apple has a very successful thing going on there, and everyone's worried about whether they're going to support PWAs, because that's how you chip away at that kind of stuff. But I think this move is inevitable. And one of the nice things about even personal assistants today, digital personal assistants, is if you're an Amazon Echo person or a Cortana person or a Google Assistant person, you can actually move pretty easily, probably very easily, between those platforms. The important thing to you is not the thing you're interacting with, because I think these things will all be functionally equivalent at some point. It's the things it's controlling, the things that it can do for you. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like this is it's like it's as natural as death. No, I mean, it's I just think it's inevitable.
Yeah. I mean, Alex Kipman and other people too talk about augmented reality goggles like the HoloLens and HoloLens 2, whatever that looks like in the end, as being edge devices too, right? And that's how he's justified saying, phones are kind of, okay, they're important right now, but in the not too distant future, you're not going to be looking at your phone to get the information you get from a phone now. You're going to be using it.
The notion that you are looking at some tiny screen is going to one day seem so antiquated to us.
Right? Yeah. Right. It'll be like, I went up to a lamp and I said, turn it on. I didn't
exactly.
have to program
and it knew whether you had the permission to do this, and it's all automatic. I mean, look, the phone was so magical, compared, and still is in some ways, compared to these bulky PCs and so forth. I mean, but there is something that's going to do that to the phone as well. Right.
I mean, they're hoping, because they missed mobile, because they missed the phone, they're hoping they can say, okay, we missed that, and we're going to try to latch onto the next wave, right? And play there.
Yeah, I wish they had. I mean, HoloLens and that kind of technology has a place for sure. Being able to understand mobile platforms like Qualcomm Snapdragon at some kind of scale, there's some reason for Microsoft to want to do that. It makes sense. It's fine. But I think they've confused matters by referring to those things as the next wave in their turn. And those things are not the next wave. They're a thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're not. I don't mean to say that they're failures or pointless or whatever, but keeping edge and making web apps and PWAs is part of a transition, a part of a continuum as well. It's not the thing, it's not the next thing, the next wave, but it's still important. But yeah, we say this all. It's hard not to get out of this mode, but looking forward to build, because I'm always very curious how they communicate this stuff. Yeah. I mentioned, I can't remember what I said this about, but going back and looking at something Microsoft had written or said a long time ago, and I did that with this intelligent edge, intelligent cloud stuff a week or two ago, whatever it was, and they really kind of laid it out. I often talk about how they don't communicate effectively. The truth is, with looking at it now, I say I can see they have laid this vision out. They see it. And in the transition, I think a lot of people in the Microsoft space hear in intelligent edge, and they think they're just talking about computers and phones. It's a goofy new name for that. And they're going to be part of it.
You know what else they think about? They think about Windows Embedded. Right.
Yes.
Like, because that's where Microsoft used to play. They used to try to put Windows in everything, right? It was Windows in cars, Windows in smartphones, Windows in, kiosks and Coke machines and all that. And you don't hear them talk about that anymore, even though they have Windows IoT, right?
Yeah, because today what is going to be in everything is AI, right?
And sensors.
And sensors, of course. But I mean, as far as like the intelligence of it, it's not like the Windows OS necessarily, although you could probably draw some DNA comparisons there. But it's this AI thing, and again, it's the miniaturization will occur there as well. Like you don't need a hard drive or an SSD or whatever. It's going to be some tiny little thing that isn't even recognizable as a board, but is in fact some collection of circuitry and sensors and storage and whatever else. And I mean, it's a magical time to be alive in some ways, but it's if you're used to going to the Apple Store and picking up the shiny bauble, it's not the same as that for sure. And that might be tough on some people.
Yeah.
Some people like me.
Yeah.
You'll be okay. You're going to be okay.
No, it's really interesting. It also means that platforms aren't as important, and it all makes sense in terms of what Microsoft's
Listen, Leo, now that Microsoft is failing, I can state with certainty that platforms don't matter anymore to me.
That's all over. It's all over. So I just was looking at Verizon's annual threat report, and weirdly enough,
who are they threatening now?
Yeah, really.
AT&T.
It's a little promotional, I admit, but one thing it does say is that ransomware is up this year, not down. You'd think people would be better able to, better prepared for it, but in fact, it's and they're asking for more money. So that ties us to the next story: ransomware protection from Microsoft.
Yeah. So last year, Microsoft came out with a feature called Files Restore for OneDrive for Business. And when they announced this, everybody's first question was, are they going to do this for consumers too? And the answer is yes, they are. So Microsoft is adding this feature, Files Restore, to OneDrive for consumers if you have an Office 365 subscription. And what this does is it lets you restore your entire OneDrive to a previous point in time within the past 30 days. So if somebody does hit you with a ransomware request, Microsoft will send you a message and say, hey, it looks like somebody's attacking your OneDrive files, and we're going to help you restore your files up to a point so you don't have to pay or think about paying for ransomware.
That is awesome.
It's pretty good. And I'm glad to see them bring this to consumer, because I think when we talked about it on the show last year, we were kind of like, I don't know if they're going to bring this to consumer because it's kind of a big deal and it's a pretty premium kind of a thing. But they are.
Yep. They have to. The other thing they need to do is get this into the client because right now it only works with the web. But I was updating the Windows 10 book the other day, whenever this was. I guess it doesn't matter when. But if you look at Windows Defender Security Center, which is the new front end for Windows Defender and other security features in Windows 10 in version 1803, there is actually some ransomware protection available to all Windows 10 versions. It's not unique to Pro or whatever. It is not enabled by default, but you can turn this on, and what it will do is control access to specific folders and the files they contain, as well as memory areas on the PC from unauthorized changes by applications. And you can go in and specify which folders will be protected. And you can go in and say which applications can get through the protection if they're trusted by you. And so I think this is the start of something that will be maybe a little more, I don't know, pervasive and automatic maybe in a future version of Windows 10. But the basics are there now. And I could be wrong about this, but I don't think they were there in 1709. I think this is new to 1803.
Oh. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as part of that announcement, Microsoft also announced some things they're going to be adding to Outlook and to apps to make consumers more secure. And the reason they talked about all these things together was because it's tax time here in the U.S. And the idea is you're communicating through Outlook sometimes with somebody who you may not know. Yeah. They may not have
pretending to be the IRS.
Yeah.
And that's who called
sometimes.
Me.
I should play. Do you want to hear the call Lisa got? I should play this.
Oh man, are you kidding?
Unbelievable! It's first of all, it's so ham-handed and it's like come on, do you really believe that? And at the same time,
you wonder, right?
Right. I'm sure people fall for it.
Yeah.
They don't need many to fall for it. Let's see if I can find it because it was hysterical. So what they're going to do is they're adding to Word, Excel, and PowerPoint things where if a user clicks on a link in something and it's going to take you to a phishing site or a malicious site, it'll warn you, which is kind of handy. Yeah. Yep. That's fair.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's time for tax time in the United States of America this Tuesday. The feds want their money. State does too, if you live in one of those states. And let me tell you how I do my taxes. Well, actually, I don't do my taxes anymore because it's a business and all that. And we have people that do that. But I missed doing it so much, I asked my mom. My mom was paying $500 a year to get her taxes done. I said, Mom, let me do it for you. And then Abby got her first W-2. So I said, I'll show you how to do it. We're going to do it together, and we're going to use TurboTax because it's awesome. especially the new TurboTax Live, which is really cool. You can file online with confidence now because before you file, even during the process if you want, you can quickly connect to a tax expert via one-way video, one-way, not two-way, so you don't have to worry what they see, as often as you want during the process, whenever you need answers and advice on your taxes. The expert can even review your return before you file it, so you make sure there's no errors, and she'll make any necessary changes for you, too. And it's all backed by a 100% accuracy guarantee. TurboTax Live. It's the easiest way. It's so fun. I actually asked other people, can I do your taxes for you? TurboTaxLive.com/Windows. Connect with a TurboTax Live expert today. It also, I want to point out, if you're kind of freaking, gosh, it's a few days off, it's fast. It's easy. And with e-filing, you won't be waiting in line at the post office at midnight on Tuesday either. TurboTaxLive.com/Windows. We thank TurboTax for their support and thank that expert for helping us get this stuff done. Time for the back of the book. Let's start it all off with Mr. Paul Thurrott, the gongable Paul Thurrott.
I was
He's only got
relatively
one gong
gone-free.
so far.
You were very good, Paul. No rants.
You were. I'm
I-
impressed.
Yeah.
I tried.
Yeah.
I tried not to rant today.
Sometimes he's trying, sometimes he's tried.
The dog tries not to eat stuff off the table, too.
Yeah,
but,
right.
It's not always successful. By the way, Apple has apparently commissioned a TV series based on Isaac Asimov's
I know.
Foundation series.
I'm so excited. So
I am,
excited.
too. The only problem is I have to wait years for this to happen, but I'm dying to see something like that.
It's also really hard to do because if you look at the movie and TV companies that have bought the rights and then not made a show, it's pretty much everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause it's
There's
hard
a bunch
to
of
do.
Stephen King like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's one of my favorite sci-fi series. At least the first few are.
Oh, yeah.
It goes on. There's many.
Even the
of
ones he
them.
did in the 80s are good. I really like that series.
Yeah,
and he
Asimov's
ties
the
it in with the
greatest.
robot books and everything.
Yep.
It's great.
Yep. Harry Seldon.
Yep.
That's always the name I was going to use if I ever get arrested and I need to use a pseudonym. I was going to use Harry Seldon. And
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it'd be just my luck. I'd run into the cop who's read Foundation.
The first book was a series of short stories. I don't know how they're going to do that, but
Yeah.
anyway. Okay,
But it's a universe. See, that makes it really good.
It is, and
Yeah.
It's like Star Wars. They could just do all kinds
they
of
can
stuff.
go on
or Star
forever.
Trek.
Yeah.
So let's see. Okay, so I have two tips this week. One is that Alan over at AdDuplex, we cite his data all the time, has created an online tool called Extendee. They'll probably convert it for different in-person conferences, but they have it up right now for Build 2018. So if you're going to Build 2018, and this might be expensive to you, or you're worried about how you're going to get to and from places and so forth, you can register through Extendee and find other people who might be going to the same airport to fly there, might be arriving around the same time when you arrive in the Seattle area, and you could, ride share and do other things like that, find people with like interests and so forth. And it's basically just a way to make your build experience better and less expensive. Yeah. So Alan, by the way, also wrote a book about an ebook about attending a tech conference for the first time. The idea being that a lot of people in the tech industry are actually kind of shy introverts and don't get out a lot, which I could.
What are they talking about?
And how you, in other words, you're spending all this money, or your employer is, to send you to the show. You should make the most of it. Go see the people you want to see. If there are famous people from Microsoft or whatever that you want to shake their hand and get their autograph, go, or Mary Jo, go do that stuff. And it's worth checking that stuff out too. I've got links to it in my article. But Alan's a good guy, and this is such a great idea. So something to look at if you are going to build.
Extendee.
Extendee, like
And
extend with EE.
Do go to the Paul and Mary Jo meetup. I'm sure you're going to announce that at some point as well.
Yeah,
Yep.
we're still working that out, but it's going to be Tuesday night at Build.
Keep
So
that
stay
open.
tuned.
Build,
Yep.
Hopefully, we'll be at Shiro's, the sushi place,
You wish.
with no reservations accepted.
Boy.
I do wish, but that's okay. So the other tip is that select models of Surface Book 2 are on sale this week for $150 off.
Oh.
The problem with the sale is that if you go to the Microsoft Store right now, you will discover they are temporarily all sold out. So hopefully that will change. Someone had asked Mary Jo and I today on Twitter if this lack of availability of Surface Book 2 perhaps hinted at a upgrade of the device. I don't think that that's the case. I think it's just related to the sale, frankly. Microsoft doesn't really have the same control over the supply chain as, say Apple does, where I don't think we can ascertain anything from this lack of availability other than the fact that maybe $150 off is the right price. And then two app picks. Mehdi, who writes for us at Thurrott.com, has an excellent Twitter client called Tweetin, which I'm actually using now. It's based on TweetDeck, but he basically fixes everything that's wrong with TweetDeck, and he responds to a lot of user feedback and adds a ton of features based on that stuff too. This was just updated. He makes a version of this. You can download it for Windows, Windows Store. I don't have the whole list in front of me. Where's my list? It is available on Mac OS, Chrome, and Firefox as well. And the big thing here in this release is just the responsive design. Like, one of the things I really like about the PWA version of Twitter is that you can use it in a single column view. Like, a lot of people use TweetDeck, use it for the multiple column thing across a big window. But I like to have the single column view over on the right side of the screen, which is how I've been using all my Twitter apps actually for a long time now. And now it does that, so it actually works really good in single column view.
See, I like the TweetDeck style, but if you have other stuff you want to do. Yep. So what do you just shrink the window down and? Yeah,
and it's just kind of a
nice.
It's responsive, as we
say.
It's
responsive. I love it. I love it. That's great. So you just and then can I get rid of this too? The oh yeah, look at that. Oh man.
Yeah.
Sweet. It is, and it's
you can also
snappy.
You can adjust the width of the column. You can't drag and drop it. I asked them about that. Apparently, that's really hard to do. But you can specify the width for the column, so you can make it as thin as you want. Have one column.
Nice.
You have to go into settings to do it. But
yeah.
Nice.
This is a very nicely done app. Yeah. Nice. All right. Tweetin. Is it free or is it?
It's free. Yep.
Nice. And now you work with Mehdi, which is so awesome, Mehdi. That's so awesome.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
You've met him.
He fits right in with the whole online abuse thing that Brad and I feel so strongly about.
Just like you say, online abuse, huh?
You have another app pick.
Yeah. So the Microsoft Office apps on iOS, meaning Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and Outlook, were updated this past week to support the Files app on iOS 11. Right. So now this is the new File Manager application. Some apps were already supported, like OneDrive was already in there. And the theory there is that you can browse all of your local and cloud-based storage from a single location. So if you use Dropbox, Google Drive, etc., that stuff's available from a single location. So you don't have to run different apps to access different files or whatever, basically. So it works like File Explorer does in Windows 10. But now the Office apps have been updated to support this app as well. So obviously that means things like if you open a Word application from the Files app, regardless of where it is, whatever storage system is going to open in Microsoft Word. But it's also kind of a round trip thing. So you can save documents to the Files app now from Word and Excel as well. So it's kind of a seamless, it's normal now, basically. I mean, whenever they announced the Files app, probably last summer at WWDC, Microsoft said at the time, we will support this, and they kind of have done it in drips and drabs. But I think the way it is, where it is right now, is exactly what everyone thought it was going to be, which is basically just integrated support across the board for all the major Microsoft apps. So meaning you might want to use Microsoft Word with iCloud. You might want to use the built-in, I don't know how that would work, actually. I was going to say the Apple apps with OneDrive. I can't imagine anyone on earth does that. But you can use the Microsoft Office apps with whatever file cloud system you prefer. Do it all through the Files app. It will all work natively. You don't have to worry about installing apps and doing anything goofy. So it's all pretty automatic.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's good.
I like. Mary Jo Foley has her Enterprise app or pick of the week.
Yes, this is a pick for anybody who thinks, it would be good for my career to know a little more about AI. Microsoft has a program called its Professional Program, where it offers different courses. It's previously offered things like a big data course, cloud administration, data science, web development, IT support. And as of last week, they added an AI course to this list. So the course has between, I think it has maybe 10 required courses that you have to complete to earn a digital credential. And each of these courses is between 8 and 16 hours. The good thing is this is open to the public. You don't have to be a Microsoft developer or an MVP or anything. You can just do this yourself as any ordinary person. If you want to get the credential, you have to pay. You have to actually go buy certificates from edX.org and pay for the courses. But anybody can audit them for free. You just have to go and sign up through the Microsoft site to get access to this. So I have an article with links and an FAQ. So if you're interested and you think, you know what, maybe I should know a little more about AI, you can learn about things like Python and statistics. They even have an ethics course, AI and ethics, Azure machine learning, computer vision, all the kind of hot spots and hot topics that you would need to know to impress someone with your AI knowledge.
Very handy.
Very handy.
Very useful.
I looked at some of these courses, though. I'm like, ooh, this isn't for the faint of heart. It's not just I think I'll learn about AI today. No, it's not that.
Not that.
Wednesdays at 2.
Yeah, not that.
And you have a code name, I see.
I do. So a few weeks ago on Windows Weekly, we had a code name Zanzibar, and we were kind of iffy about what it was. The Walking Cat had found some links and some pictures, and we were trying to figure out what it was. Well, Microsoft announced it this week. So Project Zanzibar is a mat, like a rollable mat that you can use. Yeah, if you look at my blog post, it looks like a yoga mat, except you hold it in your hand. It's portable. And it does a lot of really crazy things. Like you can put objects on it, and it can identify the placement of the objects, and in some cases what the objects are. And it uses near field communication technology to do this. It can like feel where the mat is, which way it's oriented. And so Microsoft's kind of touting this as a way to blend physical and digital worlds. The whole thing they've been trying to do with their 3D campaign and their mixed reality campaign.
This is right along with Paul's vision of the new world right here.
Yeah, kind of, right? Yeah. And it also kind of fits in with what they've been doing with Minecraft. In other words, finding ways to get to that generation of younger students. They show some toy scenarios that could be used, or some young adult gaming kinds of things you could use with this mat. And what this reminded me of was Playtable. Remember when Microsoft first announced the big Surface table? They showed you being able to drop objects onto it, and it would recognize what those objects were and give you information about them. So it's like, wow, we've come a long way from the big ass Surface table to the little rollable mat.
I just used one of those a couple of weeks ago.
Did you really?
Microsoft
one of the
Field
original
Office in
Surface?
Pennsylvania. Yeah, the Surface.
Oh man, wow. Yeah, so that's what Zanzibar is, and Microsoft's presenting a paper about it this week at an ACM conference in Montreal, and I think they're even going to do a demo of it. So who knows? Maybe this will come to market at some time in the foreseeable future.
I love the name too, Zanzibar.
I know. Yeah, very cool.
Well, there's a video on it on the Project Zanzibar site if you want to. Oh, that's.
And see, you can use it with a computer as a display, right? So it's kind of interesting. It gives you like this idea of another surface, another touch surface, right?
Yeah, but not a glass one.
No.
Yeah. I wonder if I did yoga on it, if it would know what my pose was.
That would be cool, right? Yeah. If they had a giant one.
Oh, you're doing Warrior 2.
And you're doing it well, or not so well.
Yeah, what's all that jiggling going on? Yeah. So, time for some beer, Mary Jo. Time for some beer.
I haven't done a sour beer pick in a while. And now that it's kind of turning into spring around here, seems like a good time to talk about sours again.
Yes.
So there's a brewery in Vermont, in Brattleboro, Vermont, called Hermit Thrush. And they make a bunch of amazing sour beers. They're starting to be more widely available in cans around different parts on the East Coast. I'm not sure if they made it to the West Coast. But this one I tried recently called Brattleberry is a really delicious one. It's this light pink color. It's a sour beer, a sour beer made with apples but aged on raspberries. So you taste apple and raspberry And it's pink, and it's like just so flavorful and fruity and delicious. It's sour, but it's not overly sour. You know, some sour beers, you're just like, whoa, this is not for a novice. But this one, I would let anybody try this and say, this is what a sour beer should be. So it's called Hermit Thrush Brattleberry.
I want to get this.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very cool. Well, that wraps it up for the day. If beer is here, it's time to go home.
Yep.
That's the motto for Windows Weekly. You'll find our esteemed cast on the web. Mary Jo Foley is at allaboutmicrosoft.com. Paul Thurrott is at thurrott.com. And Paul's books are at leanpub.com as well. You can get the field guide to Windows 10 and the posters and all sorts of cool stuff there. leanpub.com. We do this show every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. If you want to tune in live, join us in the chat room at irc.twit.tv. The stream is at twit.tv/live. There's audio as well as video, so you can listen in the car or wherever you like to listen, or on, and as a lot of people do now, on your Amazon Echo or your Google Home or your Harman Kardon Invoke. Listen, enjoy. If you want an on-demand version that you can listen to at your convenience, you can go to twit.tv/WW or subscribe in your favorite podcatcher. Overcast, Pocket Cast, iTunes, Google, all of them. Make sure you get it every Wednesday afternoon after the show. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye, guys.